This plot, I think we have 120 plots here where we have two different types of seeding. Once on the same row we have planted both grass and legume, and the legume is Sainfoin, not alfalfa. That is what I am concentrating on nowadays because it is a bloat-free legume which is gaining popularity now in Western Canada because it is very high quality and also can produce good amount of biomass with alfalfa even. And because of its condensed tannin content, it can make alfalfa pasture bloat free if you can grow them together. And our challenge now is to find out how to establish alfalfa and Sainfoin or grass and Sainfoin together so that the animals can benefit from both legume and grass or legume and legume. And when it is with alfalfa, we know that it can prevent bloat completely. There is no bloat problem if you have Sainfoin and alfalfa. And you don't even have to have Sainfoin 50% in the pasture. Even if you have 25% Sainfoin in the pasture, it will prevent bloat. So I think it is a good thing, and on top of that, on top of preventing bloat, it also creates bypass protein because of its condensed tannins, and also it produces more biomass. So why not grow both of them together instead of just growing alfalfa and exposing your animals to bloat? Because we have produced so many different populations of Sainfoin, people now ask, can we grow it with grass? I said, I don't have an answer. You can probably try to grow it, but I cannot give you a recommendation which variety to grow with which grass. And that is the main reason why we are doing this study. It is not only in this location in Lethbridge. This test is also in Saskatoon and another test in Carman, Manitoba. We also have one of the objectives of this study is to train a person so that the person can take over when I retire in 2 to 3 years. So when we have that goal, we had to put it in 3 different locations for the young person to appreciate the location effect. Most people don't realize that a variety that is produced in one location may or may not do well in other locations. That's why we do multi-location trials. This way, the new person who is probably joining us in a month or so would realize how difficult it is to select them in one location and make sure that they would be adapted to a wide range of environment. Because the seed companies would not sell it to only Lethbridge producers. They would like to sell it to the whole of Western Canada. And that is the reason why we have to pay attention to wider adaptation part. In this test, you would see that we have 5 different Sainfoin populations growing with 3 different grasses. One is a meadow brome, which is a very high quality grass. The second one is hybrid brome, which also is a good high quality grass. And third one is probably the most highest quality grass there is, that is orchard grass. But again, we are trying to find out whether seeding on the same row is better than seeding in alternate rows or not, and which grass would interact well with which legume. We have 5 different Sainfoin populations to test. If we realize that none of them or some of them are better than others, that would give us an indication that the genetics of the variety or population is important. And we may also realize that maybe we have to develop a different population which would be suitable for grass Sainfoin mix. Instead of just trying to testing it, we have to come up with a newer population and then test that out along with other populations to see if our new selection is any better. That's why we have selected some plants already in this population. Next year we will pick them up, move them to another breeding nursery where they will intercross and produce a new population. that is the plan, that is what it is we are trying to do. We are also looking into the quality of grass Sainfoin mixes, whether grass is anywhere close to Sainfoin. I would believe that probably it does not have as much protein as Sainfoin would have. Sainfoin is a very good crop in the sense that it has hollow stems. Animals like it. The way animals graze is they wrap their tongue around your plant and pull it. So in the process, sometimes if the plant has, say, stemmy, or the stems are tough, then they will not get the stem part. They will only take the leaf part and leave behind the stems, which is a loss for the producers. That is the reason why I prefer Sainfoin in terms of grazing and things like that. So instead of me talking all the time, I would encourage anybody to have any questions you may have about Sainfoin. I would also tell you we have another project with Alberta beef producers support, and that is trying to improve oil content in the stem and leaf part of forages. If you look at oil content in the stem and leaf part, there is almost nothing in alfalfa or Sainfoin. And that is why the animals, although they are getting the protein, they are not getting the energy from oil. And if we also feel that if we can increase oil content in the forages, then probably the animals would produce less methane, which is also a good thing for the animal industry. So that work is going on. That is a very different project. We did not find any variability in the populations we have. We have world collection. We bring plants from all over the world. But when we looked at alfalfa collected from all over the world or Sainfoin collected from all over the world, there was no variation. There are almost zero in terms of oil content in the stem and leaf. We are trying to increase it to 5%. We can't go beyond 8. If it goes beyond 8, then the animals also will not like it. So again, it would create imbalance in the rumen. So you have to pay attention to all the details. Just trying to increase it, unlimited increase is not good. We may actually stop going past 8, because all our nutritionists have said that maximum we can go up to 8 without causing problem for the animal stomach or rumen. So that is where that project is. We also had, I thought you may have seen that I was going to talk about how to rejuvenate the old pasture. If you have any specific questions, I may try to address that, but I will leave it to you first. Let me hear if you have any questions.
How are you guys trying to increase the oil? Like, what methods are you using?
Because we didn't have any variability in the populations we had our hands on, the only method we can use is by doing mutation in the plants. We use a mutagenic agent. We use EMS, which is a well-known mutagenic agent, to create that variability. When you use mutagenic agent, it is like breaking up the gene combinations and creating new combinations. So, and most of the mutants are recessive and deleterious. That is why they don't survive. Most mutants don't survive because they're deleterious for the animals or for plants for that matter. That is why we have to be very, very careful. Only about 0.0102% or sometimes even 0.001% of the plants may have a good mutation, and also have the rest of the plant is okay for survival. So that is why it is like looking for a needle in the haystack, so to say. So we try to treat 5,000-10,000 seeds out of that we may expect one or two good plants. So it is a long process. It also is a very, very chancy process. There is no guarantee that we will get. We use chemical mutagen knowing fully well that they create point mutations. Instead of breaking the gamma rays, X-rays, those things can break up the DNA in many places. It can break up, and that may create a lot more deleterious mutants. That's why we don't use those. We use EMS, which is expected to create only point mutations. That means only one base pair change. But again, it becomes more difficult to detect where that change is. And I don't care where the change is, as long as I get what I'm looking for. So I select on the basis of their phenotype, not the genotype. And just to make sure that we get the genotypic difference, we try to put them all in the same environment so that whatever change we see is a genotypic change. Because phenotype, which you see actually in a plant, is the combination of genotypic effect, environmental effect, and the interaction between genotype and environment. So if you keep everything else same, then any change you see, we assume that it is genetic difference. Later on we may be proven wrong, but at least that is how we try to do it. And traditionally that is how the breeding has been going. We try to select on the basis of phenotype, not genotype. But one good thing about that is if you have selected something that is good in phenotype, that would be good. That means you can release that as a new variety. Whereas if you are looking at the genotype only and doing all this in the lab, the plant may or may not be able to even survive outside. You have selected, you have created the genome, or say what is it called, GMO, that has a specific gene which would do something good for you, but you don't know how it would behave when you take it outside.
You might need to hold that up or clip it on there.
You can't hear anything? Okay. Okay.
I have a different question.
Okay.
Can you talk about when Sainfoin starts flowering? I noticed there's one flower.
I think Sainfoin flowers for a long time. That's why when I released my first variety, there were bee people, those who were interested in getting the variety. But because we are a forage breeder and we are producing something for cattle, we did not give it to them. But they had a good proposal. I think they could compete with other companies, seed companies, for those who bid on these things. But it is, and the honeybee people told me that the honey produced by Sainfoin does not crystallize. So I think it is a very big positive thing for them. That's why they wanted it. But I think they can always put their beehives near any other Sainfoin plots. So
Does it start flowering earlier than
no, it definitely flowers earlier than alfalfa, and it flowers for a long time. That is one other positive thing that the bee people would like. And also, I think because we're talking about mixed crops, it probably would have different types of bees. Actually, the natural pollinator for Sainfoin is bumblebee, whereas for alfalfa it is leafcutter bee or regular honeybee. But I think most people use leafcutter bee for alfalfa, but if you are looking for Sainfoin to produce good amount of seed, then you just leafcutter bee will not be the best. And what we have noticed, because it is not grown in thousands and thousands of acres yet, that we have good amount of natural pollinators for producing good amount of seed in Sainfoin. We don't normally need a whole lot of leafcutter bees. And nowadays even the bumblebees are available commercially for pollination. We do it in the greenhouse, when we want to intercross some plants in the greenhouse, we use bumblebees for Sainfoin. Any
Your
other?
mix, in your treatments, do you have alfalfa, Sainfoin, and grass?
No, we have never tried three-way because we don't have a seeder that commercially you don't find seeder that can put them all in three different rows. But commercially you can seed two crops in alternate rows. And I think if I will show you, if you are interested, I will show you data how if you put it in the same row, it is not as good as putting it in alternate rows. Even very first year it shows all the combinations, all 30 different combinations we have here. It was very, very distinct. In the same row, it never produces as much as if it is in the alternate rows. And it's very easy for plant physiologists, those who have seen plants, how they grow and things like that, how they compete with each other. It's easy to understand that they have their space. Some of them have, the plant architecture allows them to grow together and give a synergistic effect. That's why when you put alfalfa and Sainfoin in alternate rows, it out yields pure stand-up Sainfoin or pure stand-up alfalfa. So there are some scenario where you can see the synergistic effect, but they are competing with each other for light and everything. You can see here the grasses are growing so rapidly. That's why you have difficulty finding Sainfoin when it is in the same row. But interestingly, last year when we counted out plants in a unit area, the numbers were same, whether it is in the same row or in alternate rows, but the yield was very different.
What percentage of grass do you think is the right mix then?
Always we start with 50-50 mix. It's easy to calculate if you know that even if we are looking at alfalfa and Sainfoin, it is easy. We know that we plant about 12 pounds per acre of alfalfa and 30 pounds per acre of Sainfoin. We just do half-half. It's very easy to calculate. Instead of going into more complicated situation where the producers can't do it.
And that level of grass won't choke out the Sainfoin?
That is what I think it is not doing. The Sainfoin is not doing as well, but only time would tell. I won't give the recommendation or comment about that now. Last year they were growing all right. They produced about 5-6 tons per hectare of dry matter, which is very good for the first year. That was the establishment year. This year we'll see in 2 or 3 cuts what they produce.
And I'm guessing this is really close to cutting now?
Yes, yeah. Next week it would be, we had to hold it for this as well as this morning. This morning we had our DGs and people like that. We had 3 visitors. They came to see it too. So, any other questions? Any comments? Any criticism for that matter? I can take it. I can take criticism very easily, because only through criticism we learn where we are going wrong. Anybody convinced that they will be seeding Sainfoin next year or this year even? You are okay.
Yeah, the cover crop principles are very interesting for sure.
We're starting a pollinator project in Manitoba, and Sainfoin is one of the crops we put in our pollinator mix.
Yeah, we have, I think Ken is starting a pollinator sanctuary project. So,
I'm glad to hear that Sainfoin serves a diversity of bees.
yeah.
That's great.
No, Sainfoin is very good for bees. So, and it has tannin. When you talk about condensed tannin, it is supposed to be bitter, but actually animals like the flowers more than alfalfa flowers. They're indicating that that probably there is a little more honey in them compared to alfalfa flowers.
It seems pretty hardy. You did a demo at our farm about 6 or 7 years ago, and there's still Sainfoin growing. I don't know how to kill this stuff.
It's very easy to kill if you are serious about killing. If you are serious about killing, but you have to let all the seed reserve go. First take, yeah. If you create a big bank, then like anything else, it will keep on volunteering for years.
Join me in thanking Surya. Thank you so much for the tour. Sorry for being late.
You are welcome. I was worried probably nobody would show up because that's the danger of being the last person in the tour.